Tonight, President Biden finds himself in a somewhat familiar position to the last Democratic president at this same point in his presidency. In 2011, President Barack Obama was also a year out from his re-election campaign and also dealing with a Republican House for the first time. Notably, however, Obama's address that night was delivered as the nation was reeling from the shooting of Arizona Congresswoman Gabby Giffords just a few days prior. Many members of Congress broke tradition and sat with members of the opposing party to send a message of unity. President Obama marked that gesture in his remarks. Take a listen to that moment.
What comes of this moment is up to us. What comes of this moment will be determined not by whether we can sit together tonight, but whether we can work together tomorrow. New laws will only pass with support from Democrats and Republicans. We will move forward together, or not at all. For the challenges we face are bigger than party and bigger than politics.
Joining me now on set to discuss all of the stakes tonight, Camila Dechalus, congressional reporter for The Washington Post, Maria Teresa Kumar, president and CEO of Voto Latino and an NBC News contributor, and former Illinois Republican Congressman Rodney Davis. Thanks to all of you for being here. Camila, let me start with you and that message that we just heard from former President Obama. It was a message of bipartisanship. It was a call to action. And here President Biden finds himself for the first time in front of a divided Congress. What are you expecting, and what do you think members, lawmakers want to hear from him tonight?
We're expecting him to lay out some of his accomplishments that he's achieved since he's gone into the Oval Office, but one of also unity. He knows that he's going to have a bipartisan fashion to try to get anything done. And so he's going to try to call on Republicans to also try to meet him across the aisle to get some of his legislative priorities done. Now, whether they will come to that and actually do that, that's another story. But you're going to try to see him to make an attempt because, as he knows, the House chamber is ruled by Republicans right now, and they're going to need to kind of step up in order to try to get some of his legislative bills passed that he really wants to get done.
Yeah, and one of those, Maria Teresa, we know that he is going to renew calls for the George Floyd bill to get done. There just aren't the votes for that. And the question for Washington right now, is a compromise piece of legislation possible? We know that the family members of Tyree Nichols are going to be in the audience in the First Lady's section.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges that Biden has coming into this State of the Union is that it's been very clear from Speaker McCarthy that he doesn't want to negotiate. He basically has been able to demonstrate that even the debt ceiling is something that he doesn't really believe is something that they should pass forward. So this is an opportunity for Biden to speak directly to the American people and remind them of his accomplishments, absolutely, but also that he has yet to finish the job. And I think that's one of the pieces that he's going to say. It's an opportunity for him to remind the American people where we've been, what he hopes to do, even though there's a lot of friction in Congress. But this is the plan if you continue electing Democrats, and it's an opportunity for him to lay out his vision if he decides to run for presidency. And what I find really interesting is that not just what he's going to do tonight, but then when you look at where he's going to go on the road after, and it's all key battleground states. He's going to North Carolina, he's going to Florida, he's going to Nevada, and it's feathering out saying, this is the beginning of my stump speech, and I want you to listen carefully of what we can do together.
Yeah, and part of that stump speech, as you just said, Maria, is going to be finish the job. I mean, how do you think that's going to land tonight? Because it does sound a whole lot like a re-election campaign slogan.
Well, at mid-year, you expect a re-election campaign slogan. Clearly, as Maria Teresa said, it's not a coincidence he picked these states. They're very important in the Electoral College vote when he runs for president again. But I think the American people are looking for leadership. Polling consistently shows that the American people don't believe that Joe Biden is that leader that they want and that they crave. Donald Trump wasn't that leader. Joe Biden has had an opportunity to be able to grow his support, and he hasn't done that. And frankly, speeches are speeches, but actions speak a lot louder than good talking points in a speech.
You take me to my next point, which I think is an important one. What is the impact of this speech? We know that viewership has, frankly, dropped over the years. President Biden got 38 million views last year, and I believe that the last year former President Trump got about 45, and it's been on a consistent decline, Maria Teresa. How do you make a speech like this matter in this climate?
I think it's actually taking a playbook of what the January 6th Commission did so well, recognizing that you have to speak in sound bites so that not everybody's tuning in right now, but what can you actually communicate effectively on social media? And one of the audiences that we haven't talked about that is going to be listening very closely of what have you done for me lately is young people. And it's the youth vote. So I expect them to talk absolutely about student loans, but it's that soundbite of remember where you were, where are we going, and this is why we need you to continue part of this party.
Camila, what's your take on this? I mean, do you think that this is an opportunity to garner more support among young people, as Maria Teresa is saying, online? I mean, are people going to be paying attention to this messaging?
Absolutely. You know, I've traveled the country talking to voters in the midterm elections, and one of the things they want to see is things that actually get done on student loans, on, let's say, the inflation, on immigration. That was a really big talking point I heard from voters across the country, no matter what state I went to. They want to see what can Biden do to mitigate migrants coming unlawfully into the U.S., but also create pathways for people to come lawfully into the U.S. And so on both sides, not just on conservatives, but also on progressives, they want to see more implementation on, you know, a faster process for people to legally come to the U.S. And so there's a lot that's riding on this speech, but people want to hear hope. People want to hear that things are going to get done, not just Republicans coming across the aisle, but also Democrats putting a step forward and also introducing legislation that they honestly believe can get passed. That's going to be some of the biggest things we're going to hear, hopefully, him talk about.
Yeah, Congressman Davis, you know, it's interesting. One of the things that's going to loom over, and I was just speaking about this with Keisha Lance Bottoms, is this balloon incident. My colleague Lester Holt and I have new reporting that there's legislation coming together on Capitol Hill, bipartisan legislation that would criticize China in the wake of that incident, but not President Biden. We know publicly Republicans have been very critical of President Biden. This is a moment of saying we're going to speak about China in one voice. What do you think his message should be tonight on China? How tough should he be?
I think he should be very tough. I think he should address the incident with full force. I mean, the entirety of the American people were watching that balloon traverse like Santa Claus on Christmas Eve, coming across all parts of our country. I mean, the decisions needed to be made much, much earlier than they were. And I'm excited that we're seeing bipartisanship on something like this, which would have been an easy punch to the president from Republicans. I think this shows the maturity and the real true bipartisan efforts that Kevin McCarthy is making as Speaker right now.
Maria Teresa, what do you expect to hear? We've been reporting that the president's been revising that section of his speech. What do you think his messaging should be? Should he directly mention the balloon? I mean, I think a lot of people want to hear him talk.
He has to. I think that one of the reasons why he brought in so much American manufacturing back to the United States is because our dependency on semiconductors and all the electronics coming out of China. And this is part of a national security issue. This is not an isolated incident. And for the American people to take comfort that there is someone at the wheel who understands the sophistication that needs to tackle it, the American people absolutely want to know about the balloon. They want to make sure that at the end of the day, we're safe. And I think this is an opportunity for him to speak directly to his expertise, which is foreign policy.
On this matter of bipartisanship, Mary Miller, who you ran against to keep your seat, she won. She's now boycotting the address tonight. What do you make of that?
It's not something I would do. I think part of the job of being a member of Congress is when given the opportunity, you show up to events like this. In the end, I mean, look, as a member of Congress, trust me, it gets very boring to sit through 2-hour speeches on the floor of the House, especially when we're conditioned to do everything on 15-minute increments. But in the end, I found it, especially when I first started serving in Congress, very informational to be able to take back what I heard in the speech and then reconcile that with what my constituents' asks and desires were.
Let's talk about the GOP response. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, governor of Arkansas. Camila, she is going to come out with some very forceful language tonight based on our reporting. Hallie Jackson reporting that she's expected to essentially argue that the president's not fit for office. She's going to really highlight the age difference. She's 40 years his senior. What does that say about where the Republican Party is right now? Obviously, she's the former press secretary of former President Trump.
Right. There's no secret. I mean, just given this was very strategic that they asked her to do this. And one being, she's the youngest governor in the U.S. right now. So, I mean, we've heard from Republicans really trying to make a concerted effort to reach out to more younger voters. And you're going to hear her talk a lot about the Republican talking points, that Biden's really not doing enough, that he should be doing more, and really setting the tone of what they want the Republicans to want to accomplish, especially given that there's a presidential election ahead. You know, we know that she's a staunch supporter of Trump, but let's not forget that there may be possible contenders. So she's going to make an argument of, you know, now that Republicans are in control of the House chamber, this is what they're going to do. But just if they can get both chambers and even secure the presidency in the future, she's going to lay out the vision of what they can accomplish if they have full control.
And just very quick response from both of you. Is this a way to expand the Republican base, this messaging?
We'll see what the message ends up being. I mean, look, Governor Huckabee Sanders is in Arkansas. She's playing to her constituency. But in the end, not a lot of young people are going to watch this tonight. I'm the father of a 26-year-old and two 22-year-olds that had a father for a member of Congress. They're not watching this speech tonight. So the message is going to be
very quickly.
I think very quickly, one of the things that the Democrats are not effectively following legislatively in policy and the way they're speaking is vouchers and parental choice. And if you look at the feeds of Sarah Huckabee, Jim Jordan, McCarthy, something that could potentially splinter young mommies of color are going to be whether or not their kids are getting the education they need, and it's going to be around voucher systems. And I would not be surprised if she actually mentions that in her speech.
Well, we will be listening very closely. Thanks to all of you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.